Okay, we're finally ready to start getting into some ballistics here. So to break it down, there are 4 main categories in ballistics. We have internal ballistics, we have intermediate ballistics, external ballistics, and terminal ballistics. Basically, internal ballistics is the science of all the various factors that affect the motion of a projectile before it exits the muzzle. So that's stuff going on inside the gun, okay, before the bullet exits. Intermediate ballistics is the study of the transition from the bullet from internal to external conditions. So that's right as your bullet is exiting the muzzle. That's intermediate ballistics. External ballistics is probably the one you're most familiar with if you've ever studied this before. It's the science of all the factors that affect the flight path of a projectile after it leaves the muzzle. And then the fourth field, terminal ballistics, is the study of what happens once the projectile has arrived at its destination. So, if we want to be successful in delivering those first round hits at long or extreme ranges like we've been showing, we must become pretty intimate with the first 3 of these categories. Now, hopefully you've already chosen your projectile very wisely when we went through our long-range projectile dynamics and selection videos way back when, because your bullet's exterior and terminal performances are going to particularly hinge upon the projectile selection that you've already made. So as we go through each of these different categories, we're going to undoubtedly revisit and expound more greatly upon things we've introduced to you in our prior videos. So if you miss some of these things that we're talking about and we start to kind of maybe lose you, you might want to just go back and start from the beginning. Because the further we get into these videos, the more they tend to build upon themselves. This is a science, so you can't kind of start off in the middle and expect to know what's going on. So if something seems weird, just start from video number 1 and you'll be completely up to speed. So before we get into too much detail here, we need to take a look at where we're headed in the ballistics portion of this series so we can kind of keep this all straight as we can. Ballistics is really complex, and it's kind of a dynamic mixture of applied physics that really intermingles with many, many other fields of sciences. So I'm going to try to make this as easy as possible to understand for everybody. But I'm still going to do this, and I'm not going to cut out any of the concepts relevant to making a long-range shot. So this is going to be a lot more advanced than probably anything you've experienced when we get all done with everything here. So this is a good place to maybe kind of just state again, really, the difficulty of long-range shooting. You know, many folks, when they hear of or even witness some of our long-range shots and our performance in the field, they kind of get skeptical and feel compelled to maybe chalk up some of these hits to kind of pure luck. And I really can't blame them for thinking that, and I'll kind of explain why. You know, although undoubtedly a certain degree of luck is required, particularly when you're talking about wind for some of these extreme range shots, first round hits at extreme range are only even vaguely possible if an entire host of interrelated variables are all correctly accounted for and all their effects on the flight path of the bullet are understood with precision. To make kind of a long story short, shots taken even at generously sized targets, even beyond 600 and 700 meters, can be pretty hard to make. And I just want to be dead honest here. Long-range shooting in varying field conditions is very, very difficult. And making a first-round hit on even like a full-size Iron Maiden target, one of them 20 by 40-inch full-size targets, at, let's say, less than 1,000 meters, like 900 meters, that's a very respectable accomplishment to be able to nail that thing on the first shot. You know, in order to pull off a shot like that, there's numerous things the shooter had to adjust for, I can almost guarantee that his firing solution to make that shot at that range would almost certainly deviate from a generic set of ballistic tables that were calibrated for standard atmosphere and meteorological conditions. So basically, what I'm saying is that shooting a target, even like I said before, 600 meters or 700 meters can be a grueling task, especially when you're getting started, and it shouldn't be snickered at. That's actually a pretty difficult thing to do. You really, really have to adjust for everything at that range. You can miss by a lot, just by neglecting one small detail. Even if you go through one of the quick 5-week courses at the 18th Airborne Corps' AMTU school at Bragg, or even if you had a chance to go through one of them courses at Lejeune or Pendleton or Quantico, you'll find that you're going to spend most of your time in that course learning, a lot of other important skills like fieldcraft, tactical employment, reviewing basic things like, fire support and things like that. But basically, they're just kind of walking you through the field manual, either like a FM 23-10 or for the Marines, I think it's the FM 1-3 Bravo, which only really includes kind of a crash course of condensed battlefield ballistics that are drafted for only really a few select model rifles like the M40 or the M24. And, they're using a very specific ammunition, usually the M118 round. So it's really just a crash course, and it's kind of set up to successfully communicate all these different things to the standard infantryman. And, although these are both really good courses, they don't really have enough time to really get into the fine details of the ballistics part of the science. So don't get me wrong, these schools do a great job training effective battlefield snipers, but they're kind of somewhat limited when it comes to some of the finer points. And all the same things can be said for sportsman circles. If you're reading in maybe a long-range hunting type publication or something, some of these articles, they'll give you a lot of good background information. They'll focus more on external ballistics, assuming standard conditions usually, or they'll give you basic formulas that sort of kind of work, but they're not really getting into the full detail of these finer points. So really, if you look at it, even a well-trained sniper is only equipped to kind of reliably engage full-size targets with confident first-round hits out to like maybe 800 meters or so. I mean, yeah, they can make hits that are farther than that, but they might take a few pokes to get it. I mean, making first-round hits is exceedingly way more difficult than it is to make second-round hits. Now, if you ever had the chance to go through like the HTI, the Hard Target Interdiction course at SOTIC, they do a way, way more comprehensive job and fill in all the details of what actually goes into some of these extreme range shots that kind of like we're going to be showing how to do later on. So that's a really good course if you ever want to get into some of these things. That's the U.S. Army course. But I'm going to try to remember here to post in the description some reading material for you guys, because you might not have the opportunity to go through this deal. The Special Operations Target Interdiction course kind of might be hard to get into. So for those of you who don't have that option, I'm going to give you a lot of the suggested reading materials that a guy can read. And you can really get caught up. And actually, it'll go into even more detail, some of these articles in these different books I'm going to recommend for you. This is kind of what they're going to use in the class. So this will help you out. And it'll even tell you more than I'm going to tell you on these videos, just because, I mean, there's a lot of knowledge there. So really good stuff. I'll try to put that in the description. This is probably a pretty good place to do my little disclaimer here. Now, none of the information I'm going to be sharing with you in this series is anything that can't be learned simply by studying applied math, physics, chemistry, and meteorology and things like that. This is just basically applied physics. And all the information I'm going to share with you in this series has already been made publicly available. And so just to let you know, I'm not disclosing anything to you that You can't go down to the library and already look up for yourself. I'm just trying to make this all more digestible for you, those of you out there, whether you've been working maybe law enforcement and you might be on an SRT team or a SWAT and you want to polish up on your skills here, just to kind of be more equipped to use your rifle better. Or maybe you're military and you need a refresher course, or you need to hear it from a different angle, and maybe you're just hunting deer at long range. There's a lot of guys who like to do the extreme range deer hunting. Cattle ranchers, I don't care, as long as you're a good law-abiding person. I don't encourage or condone any kind of illegal behavior or any irresponsible use of firearms, okay? And I hope that gaining this knowledge will help all long-range shooters, whoever they may be, to make more intelligent and safer use of their equipment through a greater comprehension of all your rifle's capabilities. So basically, this information is and needs to continue to be available for all law-abiding good people of this country to ensure basically our safety and liberty. The right to keep and bear arms effectively is for all people of this great nation, not just for a select few. So that being said, that's why I'm making this available to you guys. It's all just applied physics anyways. This is all freely available in books. I'm just putting it in a different format. So let's get to a brief summary of where we're headed. I'm going to begin by quickly running through some basic external ballistics here before we get too far. Basic external ballistics has kind of been the standard basis for most of your long-range shooting techniques, whether that be for hunting or for police or military applications. Most of the guys just look straight to the external ballistics. So we're going to start off on that. We're just going to give you a real quick overview. And for those of you who may be just starting out, brand new to the field, I will go through the basics and quickly explain how it's typically done, how most people learn how to do long-range shooting, in all your different circles. It's similar how it's done. And I'm going to explain the good points of different approaches to long-range shooting ballistics, and I will also point out and explain the limitations thereof. And after we have a basic understanding of how long-range shooting has been generally conducted, we will then start over and go through all of it with a very fine-tooth comb and really fill in all the details. So after our basic overview, we're going to expound greatly upon all the different aspects of each of these fields of ballistics. Like internal ballistics, we're going to talk about all the different possible factors that can cause variations in either muzzle velocity or point of aim as the bullet's going down, going through its motion out through the bore. And we're going to discuss the nature of different propellants and how they affect projectile movement and pressure curves. We're going to talk about that. We're going to discuss different factors that can affect the muzzle velocity of a projectile, like variations in ammunition. I'm going to give you guys some brief reloading tips, because most of the ammunition you're probably going to be using, if it's not factory ammunition, you don't have a lot of control over that anyways. But if you're reloading, I'm going to explain some of the non-uniformities in propellant moisture, primer seating, bullet seating, case dimensions, powder weight, orientation of the grains in the powder, projectile weight, bullet profile. We're going to talk about, I'm not going to give you the basics of how to reload or anything, but I'm going to give you some tips, basically refining reloading for long-range applications, giving you a standard to go by of what's acceptable for long-range ammunition. We're going to talk about tolerances in different weapons and how that can affect the muzzle velocity of the same kind of ammunition. We're going to talk about how bore wear, how your bore wears out as you shoot, how that affects muzzle velocity. So after your barrel breaks in, your muzzle velocity is going to change. And there's a kind of a curve. We're going to go over that. We're going to talk about propellant temperatures and how different temperatures of your gunpowder will change the burn rate. That changes muzzle velocity. That's a huge thing. That's very important. Also, we're going to talk about how projectile and bore temperatures can change your muzzle velocity. Metals, when they're at different temperatures, have different lubricities, right? They have different slipperiness. We're going to talk about coppering. We're going to talk about powder fowling. We're going to talk about bore conditioning. We're going to talk about barrel memory, all kinds of fun stuff. And then we're going to also go into other factors that can cause, like, for example, the axis of the bore at the breech to differ slightly from the axis of the bore at the muzzle. We're going to talk about, like, muzzle jump variations due to inconsistent rifle deployment. We're talking about bipods versus sandbags. How should we deploy the rifle to minimize inconsistencies in muzzle jump? We're going to talk about, this is a good place to kind of begin our marksmanship techniques and how to deploy your weapon system effectively. We're also going to talk about whip action briefly again. We talked about barrel harmonics quite a bit in part 6 or 7, I forget which one. We're going to talk about deflections due to muzzle brake pull-off. If you guys plan to use a muzzle brake on your long-range rifle and you got a large caliber like .338, 408, 50 cal especially, this is going to be very important. Your muzzle brake will have a pull-off effect that'll change your point of impact, and you need to know how to deal with that. We're going to talk about a lot of other tips. And then we're going to go through real briefly intermediate ballistics. Basically, the only thing that we're going to discuss there for the most part is like how suppressors can affect the transition of the projectile from internal progression to external flight. So a lot of guys were asking about how suppressors are for long-range applications, and that's where we're going to be talking about that during intermediate ballistics. Then we're going to get into external ballistics. And as everybody probably knows, this is the one you're all familiar with. This is the science of all the factors that affect the flight path of the projectile after it exits the muzzle. And we're going to discuss everything you're going to need to know on that. How changes in ambient air temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, actual horizontal range, all the normal stuff affect the bullet. We're going to talk about wind in pretty good detail, how to try to fight with the wind. How do you figure out that part anyways? That's the hard variable there. We're going to show you how to even set up, like we're getting in a lot of detail. We're going to show you how to set up a Microsoft Excel sheet to make corrections for Coriolis effect for your specific cartridge in bullet choice. I'll get you all set up for that. I haven't seen a lot of charts really available for various sporting cartridges for Coriolis effects. So I'm gonna hook you guys up with that. Also, we're gonna talk about like spin drift, why it occurs, how that works out, and then again we're gonna briefly talk about terminal ballistics. That's the study of what happens once the bullet arrives at its destination. We already talked about that, a little bit in projectile dynamics and selection, but we'll briefly cover that a little more. So basically, this is kind of a nightmare of all these different, constantly changing and varying complexities of all these things you got to keep track of in the field. Now, it's one thing to sit at a desk and figure this stuff out. It's another thing to be out in the field and have to make a quick shot. The target ain't going to present itself always when you're just nice and comfortable. So how does a guy put all this together and actually make it work in the field? That's the challenge. And actually, you're lucky because I got a pretty good system worked up. It's there's not really anything I've seen that works this way. The chart system, and if this is the way I'm going to help you do your ballistics tables, I'm going to call it the T-Borosaurus Rex Improved System of Field Expedient Ballistic Tables. And it's kind of a hybrid of the calculus or the calculation forms that you're going to be using, for hard target interdiction. If you go to the SODIC course, so that's like a 3 or 4 page like setup for calculations. And I will show you how to do a simplified version of that, but I actually made a lot more easy of a tables to follow. And we'll explain how to get all your gear set up and tuned to that. And it's going to be like 100 times easier than some of the other systems I've seen. It's going to be a little more complex than what like the FM 23-10 field manual is going to try to tell you. But the system I got is actually very, very user-friendly, and it is very, very precise. It works awesome once you learn how to use it and get it set up. And it takes kind of all the field math out of the equation. It cuts out 90% of the mathematics that would normally trip you up. And even though I can handle the mathematics sitting at the desk, I found in the field after being out there a bunch, sending thousands and thousands of rounds all over the place, that kind of sucks. Trying to figure out a math problem when you're, like under pressure to make a shot real quick, that's not fun. So I'm going to show you how to make a real easy to use system of tables, ballistic tables. And it'll basically put more of that work and emphasis on making the tables, but you'd rather do the work at your desk, you know what I'm saying, than out in the field, because out in the field you're going to want the least amount of headache as possible. Just get the headache over and done with when you're actually making your first set of tables. After you got them done, they're done. Then you own them. Make copies of them, store them in your safety deposit box or whatever so you don't lose them, because that'll be... put a lot of work into making these tables, but we'll get you all squared away. And this is going to be a lot of fun, too. So hopefully all you guys out there and all you girls out there who are getting into this long-range stuff for the first time, we're going to give you a really, really comprehensive course. And you're going to be able to make very precise first-round hits at extreme ranges with the setup that I'm going to hook you up with here. So, like I said, this next video is just a crash course on external ballistics and how it's classically been presented.